Hey folks, today we're going to walk through installing VPS in a workgroup environment on my local machine and setting it up to monitor my local machine. We're going to go through a very similar configuration for Active Directory domains in a different video, but this video is going to focus solely on workgroup environments. So I've already downloaded the VPS software from vroomperformance.com, so I'm going to fire that up now. The first step, of course, is going to be the end user license agreement. Be sure to read through that. Click next. It's typically a best practice to leave the installation directory as the default. You can change it if you want. Some people do, some people don't. Same thing for the start menu. And there we go. Now what we're doing now is just copying the files for VPS to be configured. After which has popped up now, is the configuration wizard for VPS. So you'll notice first of all that we've got a couple of links here. We've got the installation guide, the monitoring account permissions, SQL permission helper, and the cluster monitor. These are documents that are on our website. They're PDFs that basically walk through different types of configuration. The installation guide, the very first one, is basically the text form of this video. The monitoring account permissions is going to walk through some of the granular permissions you can use to set up VPS in tighter security environments. The SQL permission helper is a script that's going to help along with that account monitoring permissions. And the cluster monitoring is really about monitoring Windows failover clusters and SQL Server always on availability groups and failover clusters. Today, we're just going to go with the standard, very simple configuration, and we're going to click next. So the first thing that we need to do is tell VPS where it's going to store all of the data that it collects. That's the repository database. I have SQL Server installed on my local machine, the Code Crusher 01, and we're going to go ahead and give it access now. So I've got an account set up on that SQL Server, the local SQL Server. It's called admin. Now you'll notice that we can't actually check off the use integrated security. That's because we're in a workgroup environment. The worker processes have to be able to talk to the repository database. And since those can be running as basically anyone, as you'll see later on when you configure VPS to scan machines with different credentials, if you so desire, we need to make sure we can talk to that machine in a workgroup environment. So we require SQL Server credentials for workgroup environments. Next is the database name. Some folks decide to change that, some people don't. We're going to leave it alone and click next. At this point, the wizard's going to determine whether the database we selected existed or not. If it does exist, the wizard's going to upgrade it. In this case, the database does not exist, so the wizard's going to create that database for us. This database creation process, of course, includes the empty database, but it also includes all of the canned configurations, like canned alerts and the different weight categories and the suggestions and things that are baked into VPS. They're all in this database configuration. This step that we're on now is the licensing step. In this case, we're going to get a trial license, but if you already have a license, you can drag and drop her on. You could type it in, or you could paste in the license key, or select the license file if you have the file itself. In this case, we're going to get the trial license. We're going to ask for things like the company name. We're Vroom. My name. Email address. And my phone number. And we're going to get that trial license. So this is going to go out and generate a 30-day trial license for VPS with 10 of every one of our modules. And you can see it's valid here, and we'll click next. This step is allowing you to create administrator accounts for the Vroom software. When you open up the UI, you'll need the login. And this is where we create those initial administrators. Now, we do have the ability to restrict individual users to certain computers or certain types of activities, But this is just for administrators. So if you have an account that you're wanting to restrict, don't add it here. This is just for your higher level administrative accounts for VPS. So I'm going to call this account Vroom. Oh, type in that password correctly. And next. And this is the last step, as we need to tell Vroom which account it can use to run the local services, the Windows services. This account doesn't need to have any special permissions on the local machine. So I'm going to go ahead and put in one that I've got created already. And we'll click next. At this point, the wizard has validated the username and password that I've put in, and it's going to add it to the local policies to allow impersonation. It's going to allow it to run as a service. It's going to allow it to open up a couple of the listening ports for the Vroom web services, and then it finishes. Once we hit finish, we'll be returned back to the installer, which is ready to finish up now, and it will launch the VPS client UI by default. So this is where we're going to put in that first administrative user account that we created, which of course for me was called Vroom. And login. Once you log into VPS for the first time, basically it's going to tell you, hey, you haven't added any computers to monitor. Do you want to get something set up? And we do. In this case, I'm going to add my local computer. When we went through the installation wizard, we put in the domain work group, which is not really a domain, it's a work group, and we created the credential for running the service. Just kind of get things accelerated along, the wizard adds that domain or work group and credential to VPS to allow it to be used for monitoring purposes as just the first credential. If you want to add a domain or another work group or more credentials, you can add those here. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and go with the defaults, and I'm going to put in the name of my local machine. 01. If we want to give it a fancy alias, call it something else, we can certainly do that. I'm going to leave it alone. In this case, I'm going to monitor the Windows operating system, and I also do have SQL Server running locally, so I'm going to check that off as well and hit next. So what's happened is VPS has stepped through a couple of validation steps. It's ensured that we can ping the machine, that we can connect to WMI, that we can actually look at some of the metrics. It's enumerated the SQL instances and ensured that we can connect to those. And since everything's a success, we can finish. Otherwise, there would have been some remediation steps and a little bit of help about how to resolve those if access is lacking. So in this case, we're going to hit finish and let VPS know we're finished. And you'll see now that we have the computer that shows up under the work group. And if we hit refresh, we should be able to see that it's already brought in the SQL Server, some databases, network adapters, various logical and physical disks. And we've already got a couple of alerts, which are basically, these are the alerts for the backups. You'll see that TempDB has no alerts on it because we don't really care too much about backups for TempDB. But on my local machine, I've never backed these up before, so they're showing up as warnings. Getting into these warnings is outside of the scope for installing VPS. So I'm going to leave it there. And if you have any questions or comments about how to do this, please feel free to leave a comment below or reach out to us on our website or through email. Thank you and have a nice day.